Welcome to another episode of our podcast, where today we dive into a profound and crucial topic: domestic violence. I'm excited to share with you insights from the course titled 5 CE Hours Domestic Violence, offered by Therapy Trainings, a platform dedicated to enhancing the knowledge and skills of mental health professionals. Whether you're a therapist, counselor, or just someone interested in understanding this critical issue, you're in the right place. In this episode, we'll summarize the main points covered in the course while also providing additional insights that will help you better support your clients. We'll discuss what domestic violence really looks like, the various forms it can take, the psychological impact on victims, and some common misconceptions surrounding the topic. By the end of this episode, you'll not only have a deeper understanding of domestic violence, but also practical strategies to help those affected by it. So let's jump right in. Domestic violence is often portrayed in a narrow lens, typically focusing on physical abuse. However, the reality is far more complex. It encompasses various forms of abuse, including emotional, psychological, financial, and even digital abuse. In the course offered by Therapy Trainings, we learn that emotional abuse can be just as damaging, if not more so, than physical violence. Victims may endure manipulation, verbal degradation, and constant undermining of their self-worth, which can lead to long-term psychological trauma. Imagine someone who is constantly told they are worthless or unlovable. Over time, this can erode their self-esteem, making it challenging for them to seek help or leave the situation. This brings us to an essential point: understanding the dynamics of power and control in domestic violence situations. The course emphasizes that abusers often exert power and control through various tactics, creating an environment of fear and dependency. Consider the cycle of violence, which typically includes 3 phases: tension building, the acute explosion, and the honeymoon phase. During tension building, the victim often feels like they're walking on eggshells, trying to avoid triggering their partner. The explosive phase is where the actual violence occurs, followed by the honeymoon phase, where the abuser may apologize, promise to change, or shower the victim with affection. This cycle can be incredibly confusing and keeps victims trapped in a cycle of hope and despair. Understanding these phases is crucial for mental health professionals when assessing a client's situation. You can ask questions that help illuminate these patterns. For instance, you could inquire whether a client feels anxious or fearful before certain interactions, or if they notice a pattern of their partner apologizing after an outburst. This can be a starting point for discussing their experiences and feelings. Now let's take a moment to consider the psychological impact of domestic violence on victims. Research indicates that victims are at a higher risk for anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. In the course, we explore the concept of trauma bonding, which occurs when a victim feels a strong emotional attachment to their abuser due to the cycle of violence and reconciliation. It's essential for mental health professionals to recognize this bond and to understand that it complicates the victim's ability to leave the relationship. In therapy, creating a safe space for victims to process their experiences is crucial. It's vital to approach the topic with sensitivity, allowing them to share their stories when they feel ready. Remember, it's not about pushing a victim to leave. It's about empowering them to see their options and supporting them in whatever choice they make. Now, let's address some common misconceptions surrounding domestic violence. One prevalent myth is that it only affects certain socioeconomic groups or demographics. The truth is that domestic violence transcends all boundaries: race, class, education, and age. It's a societal issue that can affect anyone. This is something we emphasize in the course. Another misconception is the belief that victims can simply leave the situation if they want to. While it may seem logical from the outside, the reality is much more complicated. Many victims are financially dependent on their abuser, fear for their safety, or worry about the repercussions on their children. It's essential to approach this topic with empathy and understanding. Mental health professionals can play a significant role by helping victims develop safety plans and connecting them with resources. Let's not forget the role that cultural factors can play in domestic violence. Each culture has its unique dynamics that may influence how domestic violence is perceived and addressed. For example, in some cultures, there may be a stigma attached to seeking help or discussing personal issues publicly. As therapists and counselors, we must be culturally competent and aware of these nuances. Furthermore, the course highlights the importance of recognizing the impact of trauma on both victims and their children. Children who witness domestic violence are at risk for a range of emotional and behavioral issues, including anxiety, aggression, and difficulties in school. It's vital to approach therapy with an understanding of intergenerational trauma and its long-lasting effects. As we navigate this complex landscape, we must also consider the importance of self-care for mental health professionals working with domestic violence victims. It can be emotionally taxing to hear these stories and support clients through their pain. It's crucial to establish boundaries, seek supervision, and engage in self-care practices that nurture your mental health. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. As we approach the conclusion of this episode, let's reflect on the broader societal implications of domestic violence. It's not just a private issue, it's a public health crisis that requires a collective response. Mental health professionals can advocate for change by raising awareness, educating the community, and supporting policies that protect victims and hold abusers accountable. In the course from therapy trainings, we also explore the importance of community resources, shelters, hotlines, and legal assistance. As mental health professionals, we can serve as a bridge to these resources, helping victims navigate their options and find the support they need. In summary, domestic violence is a multifaceted issue that requires a nuanced understanding and compassionate approach. By recognizing the different forms it can take, understanding the psychological impact on victims, and debunking common misconceptions, we can better support those affected by this issue. I encourage you to continue your education on this topic. Visit therapytrainings.com to explore the 5 CE Hours Domestic Violence course and other valuable resources. Equip yourself with the knowledge and tools to make a difference in the lives of your clients. Thank you for being with me today as we discussed this vital topic. As we wrap up, let's remember that change begins with awareness, education, and a commitment to support those in need. If you found this episode informative, please share it with your colleagues, and let's work together to create a world where everyone feels safe and supported. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.